another thing about the publishing industry or culture industry, when it comes to stories of people of color, there has been this tendency to like profit over that trauma or that pain and to kind of perform it.
Yeah.
And I think there's value to it. There's import sharing those stories, but they're not the only ones.
Yeah.
And it's a problem if those are the only ways that culture is seen. It's so limiting. And back to Elaine Castillo, the icon, How to Read Now, another incredible book. She talks about the publishing industry and this expected reader, where, you know, it's a white middle-class person, and that's probably the person behind the scenes publishing it, and that's who they think that they're publishing for. There's often a sense that it's like an ethical protein shake. Like
Wow, what a like an image.
And visual.
Yeah.
No, but the stories of people of color are an ethical protein shake where they could be like, oh my God, like I'm learning about it, and I'm learning about it through these people's pain, and then you move on.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Eastern Honeys. Today, we have with us Maria Garbutt-Lucero. She is a friend of the pod and a changemaker and a trailblazer here in the UK. We're excited to get into chat with you.
Maria Garbutt-Lucero is a Filipino-Japanese-English-Irish powerhouse in UK publishing, formerly publicity director at Scepter, now freelance. Welcome. Named the Bookseller Shooting Star in 2023, she champions diversity through ESEA Publishing Network, which she co-founded in 2022. Beyond her publishing career, she co-manages Florence Welch's online book club, Between Two Books. Her mixed heritage inspires her work, from promoting East and Southeast Asian voices to celebrating Filipino cuisine through her supper club, Baboy Club. Maria's passion extends to community initiatives like hashtag Filipino Food for NHS and winning the Yan Kit So Memorial for Food Writers on Asia. Today, she joins us to discuss diversity in publishing, EC voices in literature, and Filipino food culture. Maria, welcome to the pod.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to chat to you guys.
Welcome. So, in your own words, can you introduce yourself?
Well, I was born in Manila. That's like a good place to start, I suppose. And I lived there till I was 9. It was very formative, like, you know, part of my upbringing. And I guess so much of what I do now is informed by that and sort of like my love and nostalgia from my childhood in the Philippines. And that has come through in like the Filipino Supper Club, and then more recently setting up East and Southeast Asian Literary Festival with my friend Joanna Lee, and sort of bringing together the community in various ways.
And you know what? I really resonate with your upbringing, because you are also, well, I was born in the Philippines and I moved here when I was 8. And just because those formative years were so formative, I find that really set the tone and the foundation for everything. And speaking about that, as a proud British Asian with so many lovely mixes within you, where is home to you?
That's a tough one. I've actually been working with this author, Kalyan Bradley, on her book, The Ministry of Time, and I was rereading it recently, and she talks about mixed race people. It's like you're on an island of one, because you don't really belong to either heritage. You're like a combination of these things.
The third space.
Totally, yeah. I started off in Manila, and then I've lived in London for so long now, and I used to have like a little Philam accent, like.
Oh, so did I.
Yeah, oh my God. And then now look at us, like Londoners. Actually, I now have a publishing accent, which is a whole other story about assimilating. But, you know, I'd love to like go back and retire eventually in the Philippines, maybe.
Love it. Can you share, firstly, how you got into publishing, and secondly, how your background or heritage has informed your drive to focus more on culture within publishing?
I studied English literature at university, and then I started doing some, you know, working for the student newspaper, and then I did some internships in when I was doing my dissertation. I kept writing like verso or Farastrasse Giroux in my footnotes. Like these certain publishing houses kept coming up, and I was like, oh my God, wouldn't it be interesting to like see how a book starts off, like to be there at the start of that journey rather than like at the end. So I moved into like interning at publishing houses the year when I was doing my dissertation from my MA, and it was like a really lucky time because a job came up in the publicity department at Penguin, and I like grabbed onto that instead of doing a PhD, which was something else I was thinking about. Like I thought like, oh, I'll do 2 years in publishing and then I'll like go back into academia. As you know, like trying to break into any kind of career like that takes a lot. So by the time I'd gotten started, I was like fully invested and really enjoyed working with authors and like found this great bunch of, culturally engaged, like fascinating, smart people in the publishing industry, and sort of have worked my way up the ladder over the years.
Is that how the ESEA Publishing Network started? Or what's it, like the origin story?
Yeah, back to the start of my career, actually. Because I was working in serious nonfiction, at that point, it was mostly like old white men.
Yeah.
So like over my career, like things have changed quite a lot and it's been great. Gradually it was more women. There was like, the whole feminism era, like Beyonce with like feminism and lights in the background. And like that was the hot topic.
Yeah.
So then I was starting to work with, more female like literary voices and then younger people as well. And I thought that was great. And then, 2020, George Floyd, and then there was such a drive for more diverse voices in publishing. Yeah, I don't know. It's amazing how much it's changed in that time. To be able to work with other women of color has been like the joy of my life. I find that those are the people that I ended up being friends with after working together.
That's special.
Yeah, and it's like hard because you don't want to make generalizations, obviously. Like,
but it's so freeing to not have to explain yourself and just crack on and just be.
And I feel like you're more appreciative of each other's work. You understand like how hard things are, and you have a shared vocabulary being in a majority white space in the media, like
especially in publishing, which historically is an old boys club. Can you just explain the feeling of a dearth of literature available by ESEA Voices, and also kind of just how you have navigated things personally as someone of a mixed background, and also, I suppose, the journey of Asian voices in publishing from when you started to this point where you're involved in Eastside Voices, Ministry of Time, all these incredible books?
Well, let's say look, I started in 2010 and then 2018, I happened to go to this like preview salon at a literary agency and I heard Elaine Castillo reading for the first time.
Same.
I love her.
Right?
I just want to shout out Elaine because she's the first Filipino diaspora writer who was like, it's okay to exist in that mixed up space.
Yeah. And not translate yourself.
Exactly.
Like she was, I remember her saying she wouldn't italicize words in Tagalog.
She was like, I refuse to do that. Why would I exoticize myself when it's just natural for me? Which is.
She's so strong and like, I don't know, I love just anything she writes. I just, her voice on the page and then in person is totally electrifying. But yeah, that was like a total pivotal moment for me, like watershed moment where I was like, this is amazing. Like she on her own is amazing, but how the hell have I been in publishing this long? I've been studying, in the UK since I was 9.
And this Heaney.
Yeah. And then, going through university, doing English literature and working in publishing for like several years. And this is the first time I'm hearing like a Filipinx American voice writing about the Philippines. And I was like, fuck, I've been really deprived here. Or like so many other people will have been too. And I was reading her novel. I loved it. And it just, she kind of opened up this whole other world that I didn't realize I needed or missed until it's presented to you. You kind of, you're not aware because you're just like living, right? You're getting by or whatever.
And described it earlier as a glass of water, which is just such a nice metaphor because like you don't realize how parched and thirsty you are for even the basic representation and visibility until you take a sip and you're like, wow, it was really that easy to pour a glass, but no one wants to hand them out.
I'm not going to lie, like I was watching... So the first time I watched Wicked in cinema over the holidays, like there was ads before the film, and then it was a Christmas JD ad that came on. Mr. Lee, who's on season 1 of Eastern Honeys, came on with his baby and on the advert on the big screen, and I was just like, whoa, that is also like a watershed moment, like East Asian representation, like a big campaign like JD. I was just like, fuck, we've arrived. And I felt so happy.
Because otherwise, up until that, you're just invisible, right? You don't see yourself like, and you kind of have to relate to other people's experiences all the time. And that is what fiction's about. So we're not only going to be reading like about one-for-one likenesses, but it is just such a breath of fresh air when you actually like your culture is represented back to you. You're like, oh, it does exist. To other people, it's big. I'm not alone. Wow. That's why I just so enjoyed listening to your podcast. So you're like talking about Mark Adobro's, his bibingka and just all the other people in like the Filipino community. It's like, yes, it's nice to be talking to each other about each other.
That's actually a great point. Thank you, Mark, for preparing these snacks. Go follow the Adobros on Instagram. Coming back to what you do, PR in publishing, can you talk us through the process of what happens when an author is signed and then goes through the pipeline and demystify what that looks like, and where do you start?
So I guess the standard route is that a writer would submit to a literary agent, and they're like the first gatekeeper. So they would get lots and lots of different submissions. I guess the best thing to do if you're an aspiring writer is to look at the books on your shelf that you love and that you feel that you're in writing in a similar mode to, or just writers that you admire. And if you go to the acknowledgements, they'll often thank their literary agent or their editor. If they're really nice, they'll thank their publicist as well. Hint. But then you can kind of reverse engineer it from there. And then you go to the literary agent's page, and then they'll say, these are the kinds of genres and authors that I'm interested in representing. And then often there'll be their email address, or you would submit to the literary agency directly. And then from that point on, the literary agent has contacts across the publishing industry, editors and whatnot. So they would then be choosing like, oh, this publisher has specialized in these types of books. Is it sci-fi, or is it, historical fiction or smart thinking? Like all the various genres. They'll know where to like plug that into, send it to several editors. And then from that point on, the editors would take it to an acquisitions meeting where editorial team, marketing, sales, publicity, we would all feed back on that manuscript or proposal. I would say, oh, I reckon I can get this person on the radio talking about this angle, or, I reckon this will be mostly review-led. We could get it into the newspapers, or we can get, lots of literary festival events for this person. And then they take all of those opinions into account and then make an offer to the literary agent, and then ideally you would get signed. If things go very well, an auction will happen, and, that can in itself can become part of the news story around your publishing. So like Ministry of Time, Carly-Ann Bradley, we actually preempted it at SEPTA. Fede, the amazing publisher there, within 48 hours had offered. And then we were able to use that as part of the story when we, placed it in the bookseller.
Like for me, reading Yellowface was that part of that demystification. And it was so interesting. Is that what it's really like? Or...
I mean, I found there were moments where I read that and I was like, this is too stressful. It's like, feels like non-fiction. Like, God. Like the Twitter storms that happened around. But yeah, no, there's definitely there's a lot of truth in that book. But it's obviously it's a thriller as well. So
on this note, because a lot of the conversations we've had in this season are about self-exoticization, seeing how we're perceived by Eurocentric lenses, etc., etc. Every 5 minutes we're like, colonialism, and we're like, we need to stop, but we can't. So you being in PR, in publishing, and working now predominantly with writers of colour and a lot of Asian writers, which is incredible, how do you navigate that PR machine and needing the angle while also being wary not to commoditize culture? Do you safeguard your authors?
Yeah.
And how do you find the best angle for them?
It's not answering the question directly, but this is just something that happened yesterday when I was like setting up a radio interview for Carly-Ann. And, she's British Cambodian. It's an unusual name. So people often end up pronouncing it wrong. And I sent it to a producer, like a little audio guide that her family had done. And they just never acknowledged it. But like 3 or 4 times I was just like, can I just check that you got this and that you'll share it with the other people on the show? Because live radio, like things can go wrong. Yeah. And then the 3rd time that I'd said, I was like, just 100%, just to be 100% sure, please, And then finally she was like, Maria, basically like, I got it. Like, I was like, you could have just said yes at any moment. Yeah, I got it. Let's move on. But there was just like this weird defensiveness and like talking down to me, and as if you wonder how this person speaks to people like in restaurants, like waiters. I'm literally just trying to do my job and look after my author. Her name is, it's not in the usual realm. So we need to be sensitive to that and just pronounce it. It's so basic, but don't get upset.
Totally valid, because you're also trying to make sure they are represented in their full self and truth. Yeah. What instances have you had with just navigating that personally when you were still full-time in organizations?
Yeah. Coming to the podcast, I was reliving it, having just spent 14 years in corporate publishing and one indie, Faber. In that time, mostly you get by and people are great and they're nice and whatever, but then there's just occasional moments where someone was talking about going on holiday to Southeast Asia, and then a colleague was like, "Oh, don't get there, you shit yourself."
Oh my God.
And I was like, so bad. And this is in a big meeting with other colleagues, and something that's so hurtful and derogatory about the place you're from, and it's fucking weird. And that happens in family too, but it's weird that it happens in the workplace, and I didn't know what to do about it. I still don't.
It's just a bit exhausting, isn't it?
Yeah. And actually a worse one, I sat next to this woman for a while, and she used to several times she coughed and sneezed in my direction. And a couple of times I was like, can you not do that? There's an empty desk right next to you. Why are you angling yourself to cough at me? It just felt so deliberate. Bear in mind, this is in the run up to lockdown during the pandemic, when Asian people are being attacked. It just seems very specific that you've done this to the one Asian person in the department of 100 people. Yeah. And I remember mentioning it to one of my aunties, and she was like, "Oh, well, are you sure it was a race thing?" And that's the thing. I don't know, but it's very specific.
I think this is what we've always say. It's just the mild daily gaslighting and self-doubting and questioning of whether that was a microaggression or it's coincidence. But it's I suppose people who are non-white do have to think about that stuff rather, and people who don't have cultural layers going on. It's the privilege of not having to think about it.
Yeah.
I remember when I was working full-time, I never felt safe talking about race or culture in the workplace, because I just didn't want that kind of worms to open, because I didn't know what would be said. So that's why books like East Side Voices really resonate with me. Can you share with us a time that really moved you during your journey towards promoting an array of characters and their voices in literature?
I mean, working with Helena Lee, who's a total icon and such a advocate for EC Voices, that was such a pleasure. I just asked her recently to be trustee of the ESEA Lit Fest, and she said yes. So it was great. I'm so happy, because she was a big inspiration for that all starting. But I remember we launched that in January. I think it's 2021 now, and then in September for EC Heritage Month, we had this big South Bank launch for the paperback, and that's 300 people came along. There was just such a amazing energy in the room, and we had Naomi Shimada and Claire Koda talking about their Japanese grandmothers, and then Sing Sing did an amazing speech. There was just tears, and there was laughter on stage, in the audience, and then afterwards at the signing queue, people were just chatting in the hall, and I felt so many different connections were being made and friendships, and that was just an amazing moment of celebration. And I was just this is amazing. Can we not just carry this feeling on? And that's sort of one of the formative things that led to the ESEA Publishing Network that Joanna and I started, and then the literary festival on from that. That's just a really nice kind of memory, and it was very galvanizing. So it's this can't be it. It can't be the book is published and then we move on. We have to keep this going.
As someone who went to ESEA Lit Fest last year on multiple days, I just want to congratulate you on what is such a moving and incredible event. To look around the room and see everyone is just an ally. Everyone is so open to discussion and conversation about diaspora, about being mixed, about literature and arts. And I also reconnected with an old friend of mine from school. Shout out Arthur Morris, British Japanese translator. I came in late, and just before you did your intro, and I sat down next to this random person, and we looked at each other and we're like, "Oh my God, it's you. It's been 10 years. That was really nice." But anyway, all this to say, you're doing an incredible job. And can you tell us what it's like running a festival?
Well, thank you so much. Like, I just love hearing that, and just the idea of that reunion, but also like new people meeting. And ESEA Lit Fest actually happens a week after my birthday. But to me, it's like the best day of the year. It's so joyful, and I really love like the audience, like how engaged they are with the authors speaking, and like the questions are really thoughtful, and there's always like this laughter of recognition in the audience. And I'm like, even through very serious topics, and I'm like, yes. Even it could be something quite dark, and people are like, ha 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 ha.
Yeah, literally.
And it's not like mockery. It's just like, oh, I get it. Yeah. It's a shared experience, and we've got a lot. Totally. Yeah. So like I'm like, but yeah. So my friend Joanna Lee, we actually met at Faber several years ago. The first time I met her, I went up to her and I was like, I'm Asian, you're Asian, let's talk.
Oh my God, I do that all the time.
Hello.
She was probably like, why is this white girl saying that to me? The tribulations of being mixed race. Well, we do it in our spare time, which is not very much in a, publishing, having a publishing day job is very all-consuming as any media industry you would know. But I think it's definitely been driven by our love for the literature and like passion for sharing those voices. And like collaborating with Foils, like the team, they're amazing, like Harry and Jenny, they've been incredible to work with. Just bringing together all of these amazing authors, like we'll choose a topic that we're interested in and be like, who would be great speaking on that? And it's like kind of pairing people up. Like we had Sipam Zhang speaking to Jiaming Tang and Troy Kabida about pleasure, scarcity, and queer desire. And like, that was one event. And then, people talking about like Jeremy Chan and Mandy Yin talking about their approaches to spice-driven cuisine and like their childhoods and how that led them to becoming chefs. It just seems like it's such a fun, like, privilege to be able to put these voices together to talk about things that you want to hear about.
Yeah.
Love. Is that so you actually are in food as well with Baboy Club. Is that one of your reasons for starting Baboy Club? Bring things together.
Funnily enough, it's the same year that I heard Elaine Castillo read in 2018. I started the supper club then in the summer, and then that Christmas I went back to the Philippines for the first time in like 10, 12 years with my friend Rose. So it's like, I feel like that my journey like started that year of this like reconnecting and remembering and learning. And the supper club it came about because my friend Rose had taken an interest whenever I'd like cook Filipino food, and I just really enjoyed that. And then I had dinner parties, like friends, bringing them together. That's such a magical thing to me. Like my favorite thing is to introduce two friends and then see them like hitting it off.
Yeah.
So I wanted to do that on like a larger scale and share Filipino food with people in London and my friends in publishing. Because, there's a few Filipino restaurants, but this, even now there's not that many. Obviously like Budgie Montoya is incredible. And there's, all sorts of practitioners that we've been working with. Having started the supper club, I remember Food with May reached out to me like quite soon after, like even after the first supper club I did. And then she invited me to join the Filipino Food UK group, which was just starting up. And then we had like dinner at her house. It was like Budgie and it was Mark, and everyone brought a Filipino dish each. And it was lovely. I was like, having felt so disconnected from like the Filipino community, not having grown up with a Filipino family in London, it was like amazing. And so suddenly, like I was in this WhatsApp group. Now it's like 50 strong of like Filipino chefs and supper clubbers and like food producers like Ronnie Bandong and Mama Z in Manchester. So that was incredible. And then I also started going to the EC potlucks that Jenny Lau hosted at the Hackney Chinese Community Centre. And again, like found this amazing.
The crew was like, yeah, in the back, you're so cute.
And then the new centre, the new EC Centre is amazing.
Yeah, I need to go.
They've like done a really great job with it. Shout out to Jenny. Huge. And
shout out to Jenny Lau. New book out, an A to Z of Chinese food.
Yeah, it's incredible. She's such a great writer. It all kind of interlinks. Like I have these quite divergent projects, but they're all, I think, have some symbiotic.
Intersectional, and that's just how we move as people who are not of one place. Also, just to commend you, because we first met in COVID when I interviewed you for the newspaper, because Maria had done this Filipino food for the NHS. Incredible impact, making meals for all the NHS frontliners during the pandemic. And that was huge.
Yeah, that was so cool to be in touch with you.
Can you share what it felt like? Did it feel galvanizing or purposeful in a time that was otherwise quite bleak?
I mean, it actually initially started because of that Filipino Food UK WhatsApp group. Someone had gotten a message from a charity saying there were like 30 Filipino nurses who just landed in the UK after the COVID travel ban, and they were stuck here and they were feeling really homesick, working really long hours, and the canteen would shut at 6 p.m. and be like some grey sandwich in a
Was it a doloa
or something? Yeah. Like, I know at the best of times like how it is to miss Filipino food and miss home and whatnot, but like how must those people feel? So we did like a fundraiser. I banded together with Food with May and then the Adobros. We're going to raise £300 to provide a bunch of 100 meals for this gang. And then the GoFundMe went wild. We ended up raising £5,000. So we were able to roll it out across the country. Like Mama Z in Manchester was doing it, and Ronnie B in Surrey. And then we had Budgie Montoya making his burnt bass cheesecake, and all sorts of Filipino chefs collaborating, having this sense of community, even though we're all isolated, really galvanizing and such a positive thing to focus on every week. Let alone like just the act of making like 40 chicken adobos.
Wow.
In my tiny little kitchen, just like every week. And then I'd hand it on. We did it in partnership with Kanlungan. So they would arrange drivers to take them to our local hospitals. So, every week I'd make like 40 chickens, box them up with rice and veg, and then like hand them over to a driver who would then take it to the local hospital. And then Kanlungan would send us like WhatsApp photos of the nurses, like with their mixes, like it's the bus. Like it's so cool. And like there's a really lovely video of a group of nurses being like maraming salamat with the boxes. It's so heartwarming. And it was really helpful, on a personal level to do that. But also, it's kind of nice to have this counter to the horrible news that was happening daily, and nice to feel like you were kind of giving back somehow. But I think also I had been reading this book called The Body Keeps the Score.
I read that.
It's an amazing book, isn't it? But he talks about trauma being such an isolating thing, being immobilized, and actually the best thing to do is to be in community. So if that's, singing in a choir or something like that. But I feel seen. But this was my own version of it, I guess. That we were a community despite being isolated. Love.
You do so many amazing things, and it is really incredible to see. And so many of them are so community-driven, which I really love. You also co-manage Florence Welch's online book club between two books. How did that opportunity arise, and how does it complement your work in publishing?
So, Florence Welch from Florence and the Machine, incredible singer.
Dog days are over.
Yeah, I mean... It's funny, in one of our Zooms, I was like, yeah, you've got pipes. Because she did this a cappella song for charity in lockdown, and I had shared it on Instagram, and I was like, you've got pipes, which is
She's great.
Such a facetious thing to say to a famous singer.
Like a Grammy winning. Wow, you can really sing. You got a big future ahead of you.
Someone needs to sign this girl.
Have you thought of singing? So it was started by the fans in collaboration with Florence on social media. So we've been running for several years. And then at the point that I came in, they brought me and Terry Jane Dow over who's a journalist, so that we could kind of take it to another level. Because she'd put on events and be like Greta Gerwig and Nick Cave and all sorts of amazing people. So we kind of changed up the content, added sort of readings from authors, and I actually joined in 2020 as lockdown was starting. So we were sharing isolation reading lists and stuff like that. We'd have a Zoom every week in our pajamas, which was quite funny. But that was a lovely, lovely thing to be a part of. Talking about books with an amazing bunch of women every week. Yeah, through that, that's been another way of, I guess, championing my favorite writers, and yeah, I've really enjoyed that. And just writing the little recommendations. It's been I think it's a passion project for Florence, and then for the team. It's, it's not like driven by KPIs or like big corporate sponsorships and whatever. Like so many celebrity book clubs now, whereas this was one of the first like social media ones, and it's totally driven by passion. And also I think it makes a nice sort of connection between her fan base and Florence and community.
I want to circle back because earlier you were joking about approaching Joanna and being like, who's this white girl talking about being Asian? That's really interesting because obviously people love to make assumptions on first impressions, snap judgments. What is your experience of being mixed Asian? And how has your work in publishing deepened your understanding of Asian identity or like British Asian identity?
I guess from my perspective, having been raised in the Philippines and then here and then every once in a while when I go back, I get it from both angles where they're like, oh, I didn't know you're Filipino, or like, you don't look Filipino, or you don't look Asian, or you look Spanish or Italian, or like all of these things. And it's just so annoying because you're like, why are you telling me about my...
Yeah,
I know how I feel and I know my background or whatever, but it is, I think at any point, going to be annoying to be told about yourself. That's why I really enjoyed reading The Ministry of Time, because Kalyan is British Cambodian, and the protagonist in that also is, and she there's a bit where being mistaken for Spanish, one of the late entering whites, and it just really illuminates how much these boundaries have shifted in terms of Italians weren't seen as white at one point, Armenians, all sorts of various things, and I guess the definition of whiteness has broadened.
I suppose, where do you see British Asian representation going, and how would you like to be part of that evolution?
Well, I guess with the literary festival, what's been really nice is people have said, or authors that have come to speak, like, it's nice to find a place where you can just be, like EC writers. We don't have to be defined by your identity. Obviously, that informs a lot of the discussions. Like it's literally ESEA Lit Fest. It's in the title. But those kind of experiences inform the discussion, but you don't have to talk about it itself, if that makes sense. You're not being kind of pigeonholed. And again, it's also a space where you have shared experiences, so you don't have to translate things so much. I mentioned that thing about laughter of recognition. Mandian said that thing about, my dad never said he loved me, but he cut up fruit for me, and that's how I knew. And that's something that so many people recognize. And there was, big laughter in the room. I guess to certain ears that might be like, oh, how sad, how tragic. But and I guess there is an element of that, but then also that's where the laughter came in, because it's like, well, this is how it is, and we just understand that.
Yeah.
I mean, where would it? I'd love for it to keep growing, and we're kind of doing events nationally this year. Like, we're doing offshoots with like Edinburgh Festival and Cheltenham. So that's really great. So hopefully, building the audience beyond London, that's where it's been focused right now, because that's where the majority of publishing industry is and where we live. But it has to broaden out, and eventually, have plans of like doing online events, because then that's truly accessible. People can access it wherever. Be nice to be partnering with people abroad, and just kind of like leaning into that sense of cultural exchange and just building the audience for these voices. Because East and Southeast Asian stories, I think, they're universal, they're entertaining, like they're for everyone.
Yeah, and I really resonate with when you said it doesn't have to be centered around identity. We don't need to talk about the thing. The thing can just exist, and laughter and joy and like whatever can just like, happen alongside it. Because that's what I feel also with like queer stories. So I went to a screening of a film shown by Queer East, and I don't remember the film sadly, but it was just really refreshing, because it was just funny. It was just like
being them.
Yeah, it was just like a collection of short films in one big film.
Yeah,
and it was just silly, and it wasn't about like, it wasn't heavy and dark. There was some themes and topics that certainly were, poignant and heavy, but through a lens of just like lightness, which is really refreshing and also like healing. And something that is really necessary in this space when we are talking about identity so much. And especially on Eastern Honeys as well. Like Mel and I did say this joke earlier, but we do talk about colonialism every single day. And it's great to have the conversations and again, laugh about it.
Yeah, I guess another thing about the publishing industry or culture industry, when it comes to stories of people of color, there has been this tendency to like profit over that trauma or that pain and to kind of perform it.
Yeah.
And I think there's value to it. There's import sharing those stories, but they're not the only ones. Yeah. And it's a problem if those are the only ways that culture is seen. It's so limiting. And back to Elaine Castillo, the icon, How to Read Now, another incredible book. She talks about the publishing industry and this expected reader where, you know, it's a white middle-class person and that's probably the person behind the scenes publishing it, and that's who they think that they're publishing for. And there's often a sense that it's like an ethical protein shake. Like
Wow, what a like an image.
Visual.
Yeah. The stories of people of color are an ethical protein shake where they could be like, oh my God. Like, I'm learning about it and I'm learning about it through these people's pain. And then you move on from the product. I mean, I hope I haven't mangled entirely her point there, but I think the crux of it is that like the unexpected reader is important too.
Yeah, I suspect she'd love that point. And also, publishing was largely made up of that type of expected reader, just by virtue of, you know, pay, etc. Certain types of people can afford to go into it. Right. One thing we'd love to talk about is like transparency in publishing pay. I suppose, have things changed much? Do people of colour still tend to get lower pay in publishing and, you know, less fanfare than someone pegged to be the next Sally Rooney, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think so. And I guess also in terms of being represented or like the kind of campaign that they might get, I think there's an issue across the industry because it's not particularly diverse yet. It's gotten better, but it's not there. There is kind of a lack of understanding about some of these issues. And actually being on the other end of it at ESEA Lit Fest, I see that like with every time I do a call out to publishers, I get 2 or 3 people submitting authors who are not EC. They'll be like, oh, I've got this amazing like Sri Lankan like writer or this like Indian writer. And I'm like, yeah, they sound amazing, but the remit is East or Southeast Asian.
Do some Googling, sis. Like,
they don't need to do Googling because I spoon feed them every time. Sorry. Every time I have like East Asia is comprised of these countries. Yeah. Southeast Asia is these countries. I will spoon feed you. And every time I've done a call out, it goes higher and higher up in my email because you will know what East and Southeast Asia is like soon because I'm like trying. But even so, people get it wrong. On the other hand, everyone's overworked, underpaid.
For sure,
you know, has mountains of emails coming to it.
It's like, so if you're representing them, they should know, right? They should take the time to do their due diligence.
So you have 2 passions. I'm sure you have many more, but these main 2 ones we've been talking about is food and books. And how do those passions intersect?
Well, I guess with the Supper Club, actually a lot of my publishing friends come to it. So there's like quite an intersection there. But then last year I was able to do like a literary supper club inspired by a book I was working on called The Ministry of Time by Colleen Bradley. And that was really fun. I did it in Oxford in partnership with like Daunt Summertown Bookshop. So I kind of did a menu that was like bespoke and inspired by the book. One of the dishes was actually like kinilaw. So I've been reading like the OG Doreen Fernandez's book, Kinilaw. Anyway, the novel is like about a British Cambodian civil servant and a Victorian polar explorer who are brought together by a British government experiment in time travel. And like her job is to be his like guide to the 21st century, you know, his housemate, sort of translating things like Spotify and like what's a dating app or washing machines. So it's really funny, like rom-com, and it's got spy thriller elements as well. Because they kind of eventually fall in love. They have this insane chemistry. But like the awkward part of it is being, you know, a mixed race woman falling in love with an agent of empire. But she's super smart and like funny, like the way it's all kind of put together. So when I was reading Kinilaw by Doreen Fernandez, she had this passage where she was talking about the first explorers to land in the Philippines and what a relief it must have been like to be presented with a plate of Kinilaw, like, you know, raw fish, like fresh fish cured in citrus. Like if you were like full of scurvy, imagine like that, how
the nutrients.
Exactly. So I was like, okay, well, I guess that's the dish that I would make for Commander Graham Gore, who's the love interest in the book. And there's also a point where the protagonist makes him mapo tofu. She's a housemate and she's like, wants to fuck him up with like the spices. But actually, because he's an explorer and he loves new experiences, he's like, wow, his mind's blown and he loves it. So that was like the main course. But yeah, I really enjoyed doing that. And I think we're going to do some more of that to do with the this Penguin Archive like series that I'm working on this year.
That's an amazing multi-sensory collaboration. That's storytelling at its heart through food and books.
I was going to literally say the same thing. Hive mind.
Hive mind. I wanted to also ask, what do you love about being Filipino?
I mean, the food. Sorry, just looking at Mark's behind there. Obviously, the food, the people. I was just there. I came back last week. I'm really sad to be home, but it was just a joy. And I took my boyfriend for the first time, and it was really lovely to like just introduce him to Filipino culture. And obviously, everyone says this like is a cliche, but Filipinos are friendly. Like, yeah. And you come to London, people are like, oh.
Yeah.
I mean, I can be like that sometimes, like on the tube.
But in the countryside, when people are like, good morning, I'm like, what do you fucking want? It's like, it's normal here. And I'm like, they want my money. Do you know what I mean?
But yeah, the warmth and the friendliness and the food.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love. That actually leads us quite like beautifully and perfectly into the last question, which is, if you were to write a letter to diaspora, what would it say?
I think it would be find your friends, networking across, like finding a way to build your own community and make work together and share it with each other.
Wow. Yeah. Bang on.
Because ESEA is the person who mentioned the thing about the networking across instead of networking up, which was really inspiring. Because I remember always thinking like, networking, like I'm going to give my business card to like some old man or like shake their hand, like really like macho way. But yeah, when she said that, I was like, yeah. Find your friends and find people to like what you guys are doing. It's amazing.
On that ESEA thing, it's just like decolonizing what we've learned about like the patriarchy and work, and literally working with each other. Yeah, is such a gift that we are alive in a time where women aren't oppressed and we can do these amazing things together. And also, like you say, working with your people, working with others of color is such a breath of fresh air. Especially after so long not being able to do that.
Yeah, collaboration, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So to close the show, if you can look into this camera over here, where can our audience find you? Share Instagram handles of all your gorgeous ventures.
You can find me at Maria GLUC, that's on Instagram and Blue Sky. The literary festival you can find at ESEA Lit Fest on Instagram. And we also have a website. You can find us at esealitfest.com, which is esealitfest.com. My Filipino supper club's at Baboy Club, BABOY CLUB. And currently working on Penguin Archive, which is 90 short books to celebrate their 90th anniversary. So that's 16 Penguin Classics editors bringing together this really eclectic international list of classics. And that's coming out mid-April.
Incredible. And she's now freelance, guys.
Hit her up. This was such a lovely conversation.
I really enjoyed that.
Same.
Yeah, we've learned a lot. Thank you, Maria, for being with us. We will support Penguin Archive. The Ministry of Time is out now, and get involved with all the amazing things Maria's doing. Thank you so much for watching Eastern Honeys, for streaming, listening, supporting, sharing. Our community means everything. And we will catch you on the next episode.
Maraming salamat.
Deuces.